Hello Internet, this here is a video with a basic run through of the Folktek Mescaline groove box. As you can see, I have it racked in my eurorack here instead of in the tray it comes with. There's a couple advantages to this, but I'll try to cover sort of both sides so that so the video is still useful even if you're not in eurorack. I guess I should start with some disclaimer language. I'm holding my phone in my hand. I'm yelling at the back of it, and you're going to be just hearing audio from my PA here, which hopefully you'll be able to hear. And, this purpose of this video isn't to capture like a virtuosic performance. It's to capture a little information for folks who are just getting started. So, to begin with, you got to power the thing up. As I mentioned, I have it powered up in my plugged in rather in my eurorack. So I'm using the power connectors in the back that are for eurorack, but I still want to be able to show you how the power works, even if you're not using the eurorack. So right now I'm fumbling around for a flashlight. If you take a look at, and one more piece of sort of disclaimer language. I forget what the name of the different modules are. It's like conduit and something and craziness. I forget. Anyway, so this is the sequencer module. This goes in the center of your rack. And over here on the left-hand side, you see it's got the CV out. That's for the control voltage sequencer. That's the power. And let's see, can we see those? Sure. 12 volt in, ground, 12 volt out, 12 volt out, ground, 9 volt, ground, 5 volt, ground, ground. Okay. Back here up at the CV out. CV, clock. The CVs are all the same. The two clocks are the same. And by the way, these headers, they're called headers, the things that are painted gold there. The left side and the right side are electrically connected, so you can plug into the left, you can plug into the right, it's the same thing. This is useful in the case of power because you might be daisy chaining your power. Instead of saying 12 volt out to 12 volt in and then 12 volt out to 12 volt in on the next one, you can pull the 12 volt out from the left and right side. So let me go ahead and explain that. As I mentioned, in my eurorack, I've got this module plugged into my power supply in my rack. So it's getting power, and then I'm pulling voltage out of it through this connector here, through 12 volt out, and why don't I move that? Yeah, why don't I? 12 volt out and the ground. So the ground's on top, 12 volt out is next. I've got the ground is the black cable, the blue cable here is the 12 volts. And we follow that all the way over here to the synthesizer voice. And this has these headers over here, 12 volt in and ground. So this blue and black wire stretching across here is powering this guy on the left. Even though it's in the rack, I'm not using the power from the rack because I wanted to show that it works. You can tell it's on because that light's on up there. Following through on the tour, this here is my drum machine voice. See the triggers there in the middle, yada, yada, yada. And this guy's being powered from my eurorack as well. So, let's see. Finishing the tour on the sequencer card rather. You see the clocks over here. This is the next thing you want to get set up. You've got, from the top, pull this out. Get this out of the way. From the top, you've got CV sequencer clock in, and then clock divided by 1, divided by 2, divided by 4, 6, 8, 12, 16. What that means is, for the CV sequencer, you can have the clock go as fast as the clock that's divided by 1, or you can have it go half as fast as the clock that's divided by 2, a quarter as fast as the clock divided by 4. 6 will get you some weird times compared to the clock, because usually we're used to dividing by 2, 4, 8, 16 in techno. So that's the clock for this guy. I'll go ahead and plug this wire in for the CV sequencer. And I'll have it plugged in the top one here. So your jump ring clock in to, in my case, I'm doing clock over 1. And let's take a look at the sequencer. I'm going to hold down the add button here. And you see now you have these lights chasing around. What's happening is on the CV sequencer, which is these 8 knobs and these 8 positions, it's going as fast as the clock because we set it over here to clock divided by 1, which means that this tempo knob should control the overall speed of things. Here it is slowed all the way down. Here it is sped all the way up. Now if I go and take this jumper, the CV sequencer jumper, and move it all the way down here to 16, even though we're sped all the way up on the clock, you see the lights are just going around pretty slow. So that's what that's about. Now let's take a look at the pretty slow plus random. Now let's take a look at the trigger sequencer. The trigger sequencer is for the drum machine voice, although, you know, it's control voltage. You can do whatever you want with it. This bottom set, or middle rather, set of jumpers here where it says trigger sequencer clock in. That's this trigger sequencer jumper, and I have that set to go pretty quick, or clock divided by 1, or equal to clock. So if I hit this add button here, you see that light going around. I'll slow the clock down. So basically, as long as I hold the add button down, every time the clock strikes, it'll add another position to the sequencer. So if I just hold it down, it'll light up all 8 steps. You can hit the subtract button, and it'll start taking some steps out. So we'll have a couple steps going for the sequencer. We have a couple steps going on the control voltage. And let's see what else is going on over here. CV sequencer add. So if you wanted an electrical signal to press that add button instead of your hand, you could in theory run a trigger out of the clock sequencer or trigger sequencer into the CV sequencer. Trigger sequence, CV sequencer subtract, trigger sequencer add, trigger sequencer subtract. Those are all sort of in the same family with putting additional steps onto the sequencer there. I'll leave it to you to figure out the rest of those. 555 timer clock is the 555 timer is actually the clock that's controlling the tempo here. I want to go up to the top of the sequencer here. For the basic tour, your drum machine is going to be triggered out of this trig seek gate. And what this says is when step 1 is lit, then it will send a signal. But what happens is step 1, then if you have a light, that's just one light. So let's just put one light here. I'm just going to hit subtract until it's empty, hit add, and now I have just one light here. So when it's on step 1, when that light's on step 1, it'll trigger the voice. When that light moves to step 2, if we put this wire in step 2, it'll trigger the step 2 voice. So let's go ahead and hear what that sounds like. So it sounds like something. And you hear it's like a little double hit. The way Folktek stuff works, I think, is the sound is made at the start of the pulse, and then it's made again at the end of the pulse. So when the light turns on, it clicks the drum, and when the light turns off, it clicks the drum. So what that means is if you hold this light down, so you get 2 steps next to each other, hear how it starts at the beginning, and then it clicks again at the end. That's just how it works. Let's listen to another voice coming out of here. Oh, I'm sorry, I should explain what I did. I pulled the trigger out of here, and then up here into the trigger header, the gold one. The way this works is every one of these steps, rows going across, or columns, I guess, going across, is a different function. So you see there's 4 points here. These are all electrically the same. 1 is the same as 2, is the same as 3, etc. But when you go to the right, that's different sounds. And some of them don't seem like they do anything. But those ones actually work in conjunction with other things. So I'm just going to put one trigger in here. Oops. Just to make sure it's still doing stuff. Okay, so that's the trigger sequencer. And let's go ahead and put like another one over here in like step 5. So we just have the one light going around, but it's going around to all the different positions, so it'll make a noise on step 1 and step 5. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to pull these out of the trigger sequencer to show you the second function here. You see the gate, and then you see this thing called trigger sequencer out. So I'm going to put one of these wires from here into the second to last position where it says 1 to 4, and then I'm going to put it in 1 here. So what that's doing is these positions 1 through 4, when there's a light here, then it completes a circuit between the wire coming out of the triggers into 1, and then out of this position called 1 to 4, and then back out into the other sound there. So I'm going to get another wire, and I'm going to put it in number, I don't know, whatever it ends up in, 3, 4. I'm going to put that somewhere. Put the trigger back in here. So you get the idea there. I'll just show you one more kind of, since I have this in my eurorack, I'll show you what's going on here. I made this little adapter. It's just a regular plug. And you see I have this guy set, so this light, not very dramatic. Anyway, I have this guy set so this light is triggering. There it is. So I made a little adapter from this plug. You can buy these DuPont cables. This is a female to female DuPont cable that I cut in half, mounted it to this plug, used it as basically an extension cord or a gender converter, and you can plug it in here. So now this Rampage module is controlling this thing. The other way to do this is you can grab a eurorack cable, plug it into convert, and then pull something out of convert here. And again, on convert, all three of these connections are the same. And hear how it has like kind of a different character than if you were to plug it in here. That's because it is different. There's a different voltage coming out of here, and it's manipulating this jack, this input, this oscillator. Whereas this guy has a different voltage coming out of it, and it's manipulating the oscillator with its voltage. So, I don't know, I think that's kind of cool. I'm just going to keep this in here. And I'm going to move... Oh, there's a volume knob here. Probably want to know that. You turn it off. You turn it on. These things... let's see if I can set this up so it's useful. I'm going to pull it out of this convert. Jumper it here. Then I'm going to put it over here into... What's that called? Patch 4. Grab another DuPont wire, pull this into the second position, hopefully, a little hard to see, and then plug that in. Now let's see what happens when I turn the knob. Not super dramatic. Some of them that are pitches may have a different response. What if we pull it out of the trigger here? Okay, not super dramatic, but that's what those do, or at least that's how those work, more or less, or don't work in this case. So that's a drum voice. Let's take a look at the synthesizer voice. Oh, I should mention, I'm pulling the audio out. Left and right, I haven't personally noticed a difference between the left and right audio jacks on the drum voice. I've just got the left one going into my mixer. I actually have the right one going over here into the synthesizer voice. So let's try the synthesizer voice without plugging this in and just see what happens. Turn it up in the mixer. Okay, good. So what I've done here is audio out left, audio out right. The left channel is quote-unquote dry, so the effects for the this voice are not part of what's going on here. So if you push a key, so this is the master pitch knob for this whole thing. And the way you control this with the CV sequencer is you actually basically turn the whole pitch knob up and down and then hold down one of these keys. So rather than holding down one of these keys by hand, we can come over here to where it says key trig, which is the bottom half of that top block there. And those are just going to hold down the keys for you. So I've got a couple, that green wire and that white wire are plugged into the key trig. I'm going to plug one of those into key 1. It's just going to hold down the key for me. And then I'm going to take the other one, I'm going to plug it into a different one. Now it's making a chord. So that's lovely. And then you can shift the whole transpose of the chord here. So that's nice. Over here on the synth voice is the filter. So I have it pretty much all the way down. Then you can turn it all the way up, and I don't really hear an effect there from the filter. Let's try it over on the wet side. I'm going to pull the jack out, plug it over here into right. And the right's the so-called wet side. So you'll get a synth sound here when you turn mix up from 0. So I have, over here is where you configure the effects. Right now it's set up on the reverb effect. So this is the mix, which effectively directs how much of the audio from the left channel into the right channel, and the right channel has the effects on it. So it also works like a volume knob for the effects. This next knob next to it probably has a name. Rate. That does different stuff depending upon which effect you have set up. It's like room size or something on the reverb. And then this last knob over here is the feedback. So the whole sort of reverb effect gets more dramatic as you turn that up. More kind of epic, I guess you would say. Frankly, I think on the reverb, a little bit goes a long way. So I'm going to go back to the dry, just so you can hear what's going on better, by moving this plug over to the dry side. By the way, if you turn this knob all the way down, it just turns off. Okay, so I'm going to use my eurorack patch cables here to pull information out of this guy where it says CV out over here on the sequencer, and I'm going to put it in here. See where it says pitch CV and then ground there? Basically I'm going to make that connection, but instead of using the DuPont wires, because they're stretched kind of thin here, I'm going to use one of my eurorack cables. So I'm going to pull CV sequencer voltage out of here, which is the same as if I had plugged in CV here. And I'm going to put it here, pitch CV. And the sound goes away because these guys are all turned off. So let's turn these guys up. I'm just going to turn all 8 of them up a little bit. I'm going to pull some of these out so there's just the one. Let me explain what's going on here now. So as you see, as the light's going around, there's 8 LED positions. And what's going on is that when it gets to, say, this position here, it's actually sending the voltage from the opposite knob to the voltage out, or the CV jacks that I was talking about before. So as this guy goes around, it's sending the voltage from the opposite knob. If you have more than one light going, I honestly have no earthly idea what that does. I assume it just adds the voltages from across the thing, but I really don't know. So I leave that to you to figure out. I'm going to turn the volume back up here. So you can kind of see why I have it set to a really slow clock divide over here, because this thing is kind of epic. So when you put it through the reverb, so I'm going to turn that off for a sec, and we're going to change the effect from the reverb, which is the open setting, and then I'm going to plug in, I'm going to connect this top jumper to the third jumper, and let's see what that does. That's the pitch delay. That's my favorite one. So this one makes sense to me. This is mix, and then this is the pitch you're combining. So it's got the original signal and then a pitch shifted version. And then this feedback knob kind of makes it more epic. And then if you have a mixer going, you can send it to some effects. So last thing, let's get the drum voice going. I'm going to disconnect these two things that hold the note on for you, these two key trigs. And I'm going to pull audio out of the drum voice here. Let's just make sure we have something going with the drum. So I'll pull a trigger here and then plug it into something up here. So there's that. And now I have audio, that blue one, coming out of the drum into right side in. I'm going to slow the drum voice down so we can hear what's going on here. So I'll pull the sequence trigger, slow it down a bit. And now you see the steps instead of kind of going around real quick. Where are they? There they are. So give a listen to, I'm just going to have it so it's just the wet side. Oops, is that right? So now you have the audio coming out of the drum voice into this guy. It's going into the right in, then it's going through the effects and coming through the right out. So the repeats you hear is that. So let me pick this back up and change the sound a little bit. Let's pull another sequence in here. Alright, that is not beautiful. Alright, so I guess that's enough. That's my quick tour of the Mescaline. I guess I'm kind of sorry for the shaky video and the lousy audio, but not a lot of sorry. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I'm going to post this thing to the Facebook group. And, best of luck to you. I hope you enjoy your instrument.